everyone. Jamie Meloni here, host of the all-new That Business Show 2.0, where business becomes show business, each weekday morning at 7 a.m. on thatbusinessnetwork.com, and then made available on demand on iTunes and on YouTube. So on today's program, I'm talking with John Vespasian. He is an author of multiple books, including Thriving in Difficult Times, 12 Lessons Learned from Ancient Greece to justify or to help you in your life today. So we welcome in John Vespasian to the program today. John, welcome in today.
Hi, Jamie. Thanks for having me on.
So first off, let's talk about this book. And you're the author. First off, how many books have you written?
This is number 8.
Number 8.
The next one, number 9, is coming in November.
Have you been a lifelong author? Or is this something that you implemented in addition to other businesses, or you make a career on being an author?
I started pretty late. I started in 2008. I was already, so now I'm 52, so I started pretty late in my career to write books, but I'm now writing one book per year.
And your background in business is before before becoming an author. What were you involved in business?
I have been in international career, business, commercial career for many years, and basically international. I work in Europe. I live in the Netherlands, and I have lived in different countries. So I use my background, my international background, for books.
All right. So we're talking about his book, Thriving in Difficult Times. We're going to be talking about 12 lessons learned from ancient Greece to help you in your life today. So first off, what inspired this book? Is it we're living in difficult times today?
Yes, we are. At least many people, not only in the U.S., but in other countries. We live in times of turmoil, which are very similar to the problems that the ancient Greeks have to encounter 25 centuries ago. And I found fascinating the idea that the ancient Greek culture was able to thrive for 10 centuries, despite invasions, despite bad crops, despite all kind of attacks from neighbors and from foreigners. And it was able to thrive. It was able to do very well. And most of our culture, what is our sense of proportion, our love of beauty, of sculpture, of theater, most of it comes from ancient Greece.
Do you feel that our culture correlates better with ancient Greece versus like the Roman Empire lasted for thousands of years too? So they were obviously able to, sustain through difficult times as well. Do we just correlate better with ancient Greece, or how would you analyze?
Yes, we do, because all the things that actually make our world function, our respect for individuals, free trade to the extent that it still exists, private property, the basis of civilization is basically from ancient Greece. Later on, it was taken over by the Romans imperfectly, and they hang on to ancient Greek culture for a few hundred years, and then it started to collapse in the 5th century, and eventually it collapsed. So to the extent that we are successful and happy and doing well, it is because we are very much like the ancient Greek.
Now, you're a world traveler, as you were just talking about there in the opening segment. You're traveling, across the world and seeing, what a lot of us here in America probably take for granted. What is just the overall, status or the overall state of the globe today, culturally?
Well, the prognosis has to be very optimistic, because if you look at the news, you listen every day on the radio or the newspapers, you tend to get depressed because they only emphasize the negative. But if you look at the big picture, if you look at the main factors that are going to drive the next decades, which is entrepreneurship, competition between countries to make things better for business and for investors, and the improvement in technology to the extent that every individual is able to afford technology that a few years ago was only affordable to a big company. All these trends are going to continue, and they make me very optimistic about the future, despite the problems, despite the turmoil. I think the world is going to continue to improve in the next decades, and we can be very optimistic.
Well, that's good to hear somebody speaking of optimism, so that's a very nice breath of fresh air. So let's talk about some of these lessons then that you talk about in your book, Thriving in Difficult Times. Talk to us about one of these lessons right now. What can you open us up with?
Well, one of the great lessons that we have to really remind ourselves every day from the ancient Greeks is that they knew very well how to deal with prejudice and with stubbornness, because they were surrounded by very totalitarian cultures. They were surrounded by the Egyptians, the Persians, And they have to deal with them because the ancient Greeks, they traded, they live in small cities, they travel by sea because it was very, very easy and very inexpensive. And they have to deal with people that have completely different ideas, different languages, different religions, and they found a way to deal with them very successfully. They traded with everybody on everything, and they didn't have problems that people were different. And even in Athens, in the times of greatest splendor in the 5th century before Christ, 30% of the population were foreigners. So ancient Greek culture was very open, very successful, and very flexible. And this is a lesson we have to remind ourselves every day, that to find a way to do business with everybody will make you more successful. And to close yourself and to become narrow-minded in the long term is very, very detrimental.
Okay, so you say the ancient Greeks then handled prejudice very well. It was not a huge component of their culture to have, racially motivated, subsects within their communities. Now, how you as a world traveler see the other cultures across the globe? Do you see a lot of different, racism across the communities as you travel through other countries, or is America kind of unique with our cultural divides?
Well, America might be more homogeneous than the average because it's a very large country, and then you find areas where people do not travel a lot. But when you move in smaller countries, like it's the case in Europe, people are very open for business. They are very willing to travel abroad to develop their careers, and I think they are also very willing to invest their savings in other countries or in other continents. And I find this a very, very positive trend. And I think many Americans, they might benefit from that, because trade and investment across borders make people tolerant, and make people interested in other cultures, and make people open their eyes to the rest of the world, and to become, I think, more relaxed, because they see the big picture. They see humanity moving forward. They see how things are getting better progressively, and they don't focus so much on the local news, which most of the time is going to emphasize the negative.
Yeah, and in our country here, the 24-hour news networks are not even really news sites, in my opinion. They're just, they're opinion sites. They're left-sided or right-sided, and they're just there to drive viewers based on the drama. And it's unfortunate that so many people buy into them. And if people have listened to the program enough, I talk about the idea of, it's like watching a team. You're going to cheer for whatever team that you're on, and that's what media has done to our country. You're either on team left or you're on team right, and you're going to cheer for that side no matter how they're performing. And so it's just a great lesson there to take away from your book about how the ancient Greeks then dealt with prejudice in their community. What's another great lesson then from the ancient Greeks that we can help improve our life today?
Well, another great lesson that you have to learn, we have to remind ourselves, is that sometimes, and this was actually written in detail by Plato in one of his books, he wrote some advice for his disciples, and told, look, if you want to be successful and happy, sometimes you will inevitably have to move, because some places, some cities, some towns, they are too small, people are too narrow-minded, and there are few economic opportunities. And this is something that is sometimes difficult to accept if you like to live in a certain area, that, okay, you expect that things are going to get better, but most of the time it's very slow. Economic progress in some areas is very slow, so you will do much better if you move. And this is a problem in some countries, that people just don't want to move even 50 kilometers. Yeah. And sometimes to find economic opportunities, I mean, you have to imagine Plato was 25 centuries, so living 25 centuries ago. He already recommended people, look, don't waste your time in some places because there are no opportunities. Just move to a bigger city, and then you will make a good career.
Yeah, absolutely. I myself grew up in a small town in West Virginia, and I used college as my way to get to a bigger city, which is in Tampa now. But I still kind of feel like I'm in a small city these days. But out of all the people that I went to high school with, about 90% of them stayed locally, and a lot of them are still there. It's people get connected to their community, and they don't feel like moving. Is that something, though, in ancient Greeks' time, that they moved around a lot? Was that something that was core to their culture?
Yes, they moved very often because they didn't have this idea of citizenship that we have today. I mean, cities in ancient Greece, the average city was about 50,000 people, and the biggest city was Athens. In the best of times, it was 300,000 people, so it was still very small. And you have to realize with 300,000 people, they built a huge culture. They built theaters, they built temples, they built sculptures, they developed trade around the Mediterranean, and they opened trading posts in 23 different locations. So you have to realize that they moved around because they just wanted to have a better life. And sometimes it was easier just to move to North Africa, to move to the Middle East, to settle down. That was very easy because there were no borders. Everybody was trading with gold and silver. So it was very easy to establish yourself as a trader. They will go there. They will sell their wares. They traded in olive oil, and they did very well. Huh?
Good information. Currently talking again to John Vespasian, author of the book Thriving in Difficult Times, 12 Lessons from Ancient Greece to Improve Your Life Today. And we got a lot more with him when we come back. We've only been able to cover 2 of them so far, eliminating prejudice and then moving around to find better opportunities. So we won't be able to probably cover all 12 of them, but we'll cover some more of them when we come back from the break. On That Business Show 2.0, I'm your host, Jamie Meloni, where business becomes show business.
Hi, welcome to Yeager's. We just want to take a minute and show you what we're all about. At Yeager's, our primary business is hardwood flooring, although we are remodelers for kitchen, bath, and general construction. We operate a fleet of shop-at-home vans that have all the flooring type products, hardwood flooring, laminate flooring, tiles, stone, what have you. So we're able to come out first with products in our vehicles and take a look at the setting, how the colors will work, and then to be able to come up with some options and ideas for you. If that's not good enough, we have a large distribution center that we inventory product and have a nice display area.
Hi, Jackie Skelton from JR World Travel here. If you travel, you need a licensed professional travel consultant, not a computer. Your licensed professional consultant can get you more for your time and your money. Value for your money and experience, not marketing salesmanship. When you're sick, you call the doctor. When you need legal advice, you call an attorney. So the next time you want to go on any type of travel, call your licensed professional travel consultant who actually represents you. We specialise in group travel, family reunions, weddings, to escorting large groups or making special arrangements for the disabled. Please call 844-249-0190. We are a full-service travel consultancy offering worldwide concierge service. Air, land, sea, rivers, resorts, locally, nationally and internationally. Remember that number, 844-249-0190.
And we're back to That Business Show 2.0. I'm your host, Jamie Meloni, where business becomes show business. Talking to John Vespasian, author of Thriving in Difficult Times, about the 12 lessons to learn from ancient Greeks to improve your life today. So, John, take us on to the third one that we can use to improve our life today.
Well, another difference between the ancient Greek culture and today's culture is that they were willing, as a general rule, to deal with imprecise, I would say, non-mathematical situations. Let me give you an example. Well, for instance, when it comes to health or to personal development, we have a vision in the 21st century which is very much mathematical. We expect, if you are sick, you expect to go to the physician and you get a prescription to take 2 milligrams of this or 2 milligrams of that, and then you expect to be well exactly in 7 days. And if you want to do something, you expect your business to grow 5% per year and your salary to grow 2% per year. I mean, we have this mentality, which is mathematically oriented, which was completely strange to the ancient Greeks. The ancient Greeks, they have an approach to life that was very much relaxed. They knew how to deal with the ups and downs. And when it came to personal health, their holistic approach proposed by Hippocrates, who wrote a lot of books of medicine in ancient Greece, was very much based on a balanced lifestyle, a good diet, and plenty of rest.
Yeah, something that our culture lacks. We are very much a go society in American culture. And I myself had the fortunate luck of being able to travel to Puerto Rico and just even seeing the cultural differences in that country, much more relaxed, much more work-life balance. Remember going to a fast food restaurant, and fast food there is 30 minutes. And so it's funny how the different cultures, differentiate when you go from country to country. John, take us on to the fourth lesson that we can learn from the Greeks.
Well, another lesson that we have to learn from the Greeks is their approach to recovery. When you're sick or you have some problem, they use very heavily herbal teas. And this is something that some people still do today if they live on the countryside. In the cities, it's something you don't do very often. But one of the great herbalists of ancient times was Dioscorides, who lived on the 1st century BC. He wrote extensively about herbs. And in my book, I really go into detail how using very simple herbs, you can find easily chamomile, sage, mint, how it can really improve your immune system. And the cost is very, very low. It's very, very inexpensive. And if you adopt the habit of drinking herbal tea, and not many people do that, unfortunately, if you just quit at least a few times per week, just to stop drinking sodas and you start drinking herbal tea, it can make a huge difference in the long term because it's very, very healthy, very inexpensive. And if you reinforce your immune system, you will be much healthier in the long term.
I guess sweet tea from the restaurant isn't a substitute, right? It's got to be herbal tea, right?
Well, I'm talking about herbal teas, which is basically blades that you put into boiled water, very, very hot water.
No, it's just the herbal tea. I mean, the sweet tea is one of my addictions, like you mentioned, soda and stuff. But yeah, I try to substitute soda with sweet teas and say, all right, tea's better than soda. But you're right. There's a lot of health benefits associated with a lot of the different herbal teas. I got a lot of them in my cabinet, but they unfortunately they sit there a little bit too much. I need to take them out and actually use them. So let's go on to the next lesson from ancient Greeks. We covered about 4 of them now. What else can we learn from them?
Well, another lesson that came repeatedly in the ancient Greek history is the preference to deal with problems in a soft way. And let me explain this because when you have 10 centuries of ancient Greek culture, occasionally, I think it was only a couple of times, the Greeks would be a bit aggressive because they would have some leader like Alexander who wanted to take over the world. But it was extremely exceptional in their history. Most of the time, they just wanted to enjoy life. They wanted to trade. They wanted to get wealthy and to enjoy life. And this is what they did. And when they have to deal with public unrest, with dissatisfaction, they made the mistake once of electing a ruler who was a dictator, and his name was Draco. And this is why we have today the word draconian, which means very dramatic, drastic. And Draco, basically, what he did to try to remove the unrest was to put the death penalty basically on everything. So theft, death penalty, any kind of disruption was death penalty. And he was basically thrown away after 2 years because people were fed up. He destroyed the business community. He destroyed trade. He destroyed freedom. And it was a very bad experience. But what was good is that the ancient Greeks learned the lesson. And in the next 100 years, it never happened before because people remember Draco. I mean, we still remember Draco today. Mm-hmm. And it's a lesson that we should always remind ourselves. Don't take drastic measures. Try to find soft solutions to problems because in the long term, it is much more productive.
Good information. Again, currently talking to John Vespasian, author of the book Thriving in Difficult Times, about lessons learned from ancient Greece that we can use today to improve our life. And John, being a world traveler, spending a lot of time in a lot of different countries, taking us through some of the stuff that's kind of just basic knowledge, should be common sense to a lot of people, such as the need of work-life balance, such as, eliminating prejudice and racism, and, having, drinking herbal teas, things like that to calm the soul. John, take us to another lesson from ancient Greece.
Well, another lesson that we really have to learn from ancient Greece is patience. And patience, I'm talking about patience when you're dealing with business problems, you're dealing with personal problems, or you're dealing with kind of problems. Hippocrates, who was not only a physician, but he also gave very good philosophical advice. He told, look, I can give you a treatment for your sickness, I can give you good prescriptions, I can give you a change of lifestyle, but you have to have patience. You have to adopt the treatment, you have to follow it. And sometimes it takes weeks, sometimes it takes months. If it's very serious, sometimes it takes years to move from bad to good. But you have to take patience. You have to put time on your favor. You have to change your habits. You have to make a plan and you have to implement it. And sometimes it's going to be very frustrating. Sometimes people who are sick, they want to have immediate solutions. But if you change your lifestyle and you adopt a healthy diet and a healthy habits, you will put time on your favor, and eventually you will get better. And this is what Hippocrates reminded his patients over and over again: change your lifestyle, and the problem will solve itself.
Very good information. Take us on to another lesson there, John.
Well, I want to really remind people that the ancient Greeks, they produced these fantastic symmetrical buildings that we find so beautiful. Actually, you see many buildings in the United States, they are copied from ancient Greek and ancient Roman temples. And they developed this idea that everything must have balance. And it's not only a building, but a sculpture, the life of an individual person, your allocation of time, your priorities. You need to have always a certain balance. And the whole ancient Greek theater is about balance. People breaking their balance and becoming completely crazy, completely one-sided, and creating a lot of problems for themselves. And it's always a lesson when you see ancient Greek theater and literature. Always remind people that if you break the balance in your life, you will survive in the short term, but in the long term, imbalances can wipe you out. So it's better to stay away from this kind of one-sided lifestyles, because they are extremely dangerous.
Now, Greece today, obviously in some financial turbulence. Maybe they need to read your book there today. They're having some difficult times over there, financially speaking. Have you spent a lot of time in their culture today? What's it like today?
Well, the Greeks today, what we see in Greeks today, they are not really the ancient Greeks, because they have been invaded many times. They have lost many of the ancient ideas. And even if they live in the same country, they are not, I would say, as close as the ancient Greeks. But if you take a country like Switzerland, which has nothing to do with ancient Greek, historically, you see many of the ideas of ancient Greek are still there, implemented very successfully, and they have a very high standard of living. So I think that places like Switzerland, like Austria, like Singapore, like Hong Kong, they still have a culture which externally doesn't look like ancient Greece, but when you look at how they live and their values, they're very, very similar to the ancient Greek values.
Very good. And you're also the author of many other books. And I got to hand it to you. I'm looking at some of the books. I love the artwork on those books. So you got to check out his offerings on Amazon. Many different books: Rational Living, Rational Working, How to Make Winning Moves When Things Falling Apart. Where do you come up with the different creativity for your books? Because it's almost like you've created a brand from the different artwork on your books.
My creativity is very much systematic, because if you want to write the books, I would say, continuously, you need to have a system. I cannot just wait for inspiration. So what I do, I read a lot. So I take notes continuously. I accumulate material for the next book. So I'm always taking notes and messages and notes, and then I gather my material. And when I have a bunch of things I want to really put together, stories and ideas, then I produce the next book. So it's a natural process that involves a lot of work, a lot of system. And I try to be creative when I write, But for the rest, I want to be systematic because I think a systematic approach is something stronger than creativity.
Yeah, I mean, you got the 10 principles of rational living, the philosophy of builders, how to build a great future with the pieces from your past. Again, up to 8 different books here. Definitely want to check him out on Amazon, and we'll get a show link up into the show notes there to the books that he has written. So check these out. They're very unique, and I can tell from talking with him, he puts a lot of work and research into each one of these books. So we got to wrap up the program. We covered probably about 5 or 6 good lessons that people can implement in their lives and their business today from the ancient Greek culture with author John Vespasian. So John, thank you so much for being with me today.
Thanks for having me on, Jamie. It was a pleasure to talk to you.
Absolutely. And again, we'll put the show links up in the notes there to find all of his books. And again, you can learn more about us over at thatbusinessnetwork.com. New shows on each weekday morning at 7 a.m. and then made available on demand on iTunes. And you can find us on YouTube as well. So again, you've been listening to the all new That Business Show 2.0. I am your host, Jamie Meloni, where business becomes show business.